Hi, welcome to PreciousMetalsInvesting.com. My name is Ted Sudol, and I have the pleasure of having as my guest today, Paul Majanovic. Paul is the author of Precious Metals Investing for Dummies. He also has his own website, ravingcapitalist.com. Welcome, Paul.
Good to be back, Ted. And this topic really is almost like an economics 101 lesson. You know, you've been hearing a lot about all these countries and other authorities, everybody from California to Illinois to federal government here to Greece, France, everybody trying to figure out how to manage their deficits and their debt, you know, and you frequently hear some combination by some bureaucrat or economist or politician, some combination of tax increases or cut spending, you know, and it's all variations. Some people talk about lots of tax increases, no spending cuts, ranging all the way to the other side, no tax increases and lots of spending cuts, everybody else in between. Some people are mixed, etc. and so forth, okay? And again, let's beckon back to the root situation here about tax increases and spending cuts. First of all, when a government has a budget, it has money coming in from tax revenue, right? And then they spend whatever they spend. Right. And if they spend beyond what they get in tax revenues, then they get into deficit spending. And that means what? More debt that has to be remediated later, you know, and or printing more money, you name it. And so the thing is this. Many people seem to think that these two elements are part of a government budget and that they have a cause and effect relationship. Much like you and me, when we run a household or a business, you know, how much money we take in has a direct, you know, a cause and effect relationship with what we spend. Because we know that there's consequences when we spend beyond our means. But that's not the case in the government. You see, 100% of tax increases or tax revenues, 100% of them come from the private sector. Very important point. This is where the money hails from. So when you increase or lower taxes, you're affecting the private sector. It has almost no cause and effect relationship with the government itself. Very important point, because you know, how much money has the federal government gotten, say, from the private sector? You know, and no matter how much they get, whether back when they were getting revenues of $500 billion, they had a deficit. When they were getting revenue of $1 trillion, they were having deficits. When $500 billion revenue, still deficits. $2 trillion, and very recently, you know, tax revenues for the government are in the ballpark of $2.5 trillion. This is tax revenue coming from the private sector. $2.5 trillion. Yet their spending is still in the ballpark of $4 trillion, or roughly $1.5 trillion of what? You guessed it, a deficit. Okay? Now on the other side, spending is 100% controlled by the politicians and bureaucrats. Keep that in mind. 100% of tax revenues come from the private sector. 100% of spending comes from, you know, from the decision makers that run the government, whether in California, federal, or whatever. So the thing is, here they have control over the spending, but they're not controlling it. They think that if they extract more money from the private sector, that that'll help remediate the problem. But you have to understand, the private sector is an organic entity. There's decision makers there. If, let's say, you wanted to quote-unquote tax the rich and make it palatable to voters, well, look, they didn't get there by being stupid. They're going to change their behavior, their financial management, so they can minimize what they take in. So this is why 9 times out of 10, when you increase taxes, you get less revenue, because this is coming 100% from people who have a vested interest in paying as little as possible and finding ways. Now, some might not pay for dubious reasons, like, you know, tax evasion, but many of them will take legitimate tax avoidance strategy, right? They'll switch from taxable investments to non-taxable investments. Or some cases, they'll work less. You know, why not? You're going to tax me more when I work more? Then I'll work less, which means I'll produce less, which means I'll pay less taxes. And you will not realize what you think you're going to get in tax revenues. Meanwhile, you're not controlling spending, the deficits will continue. There's where the problem lies, the spending. Absolutely.
Well, I think that the problem is spending, but you also mentioned a very important point, and that is in your own personal budget, there are consequences. If you overspend, there's going to be a consequence. With the government, there's no consequence, because since they do control the printing press, they basically say we will quantitatively ease our problem away.
And they can always postpone whatever the issues are.
We'll kick the can down the road a little bit and let the next guy take care of the mess that we leave behind. So that's really a problem, that there are no consequences on the government side for overspending. And since there's no consequences on the government side of overspending, they feel free to make promises that your pocketbook and my pocketbook can't afford to keep.
Yeah, exactly. You remember the old phrase, it was California or bust, and that was by travelers? Although that's become like really like a budgetary slogan over there. But the thing is that right now, you can't kick down the can down the road anymore. The can is so huge, you're going to break your foot. Why bother? I mean, you got to do something about it now. It's getting to be extremely dangerous and extremely unsustainable. And the problem does not lie with the tax revenues. It lies with the excessive spending, the excessive debt by people who won't be penalized. I mean, they're still going to get their pensions.
Right.
You might get your pension screwed. So we have to speak up about this. Austerity, financial controls, or else you're staring at massive problems and collapse. So hey, did I make your day? Sorry about that.
And that's why you should come here to preciousmetalsinvesting.com and listen to some sanity and some ways to protect yourself from some of the problems that...
At some point we will go insane, but not quite yet, so stick with us. I'll rant on my behalf. I'm happy to rant on your behalf as well. We need more ranting out there, But anyway, stay tuned, and we'll more on these videos as the drama worldwide unfolds.
Well, thanks for being with us today at preciousmetalsinvesting.com. My name is Ted Sudol, and my guest has been Paul Majenvik. Paul is the author of Precious Metals Investing for Dummies. He also has his own website, ravingcapitalist.com.